President Trump, it's clearly evident that he won the election.
A lot's been happening lately in far-right evangelical circles. I've talked about Hank Kunneman a few times. He's kind of like the non-demon edition of Kenneth Copeland. In fact, they're good friends, and he spent an awful lot of time telling his congregation that Trump is on his way back into office this year, 2021. I honestly don't know why he didn't cover that up and try to pretend he never said it in the first place, but here we are. He had another message for his congregation, and for people like me who criticize him for that position. Let's get into it.
President Trump, it's clearly evident that he won the election. Anybody with a brain can see on the night of the election he was winning by a clear indication that that's where the election was going. Why in hell, it's not a cuss word, I'm talking about a location and an agenda, why would you stop everything and have a guy who is supposed to be he's our pretendant, number 46, gets up and starts announcing that he won when the numbers at that time didn't reflect it?
Okay, first of all, I want to address that little sidestep he did there about swearing.
Why in hell, it's not a cuss word, I'm talking about a location and an agenda.
No, he wasn't. That doesn't even make sense contextually. It was a swear. What happened to pastors having higher moral values than evil atheists? I mean, I don't see anything wrong with swearing, but if I bought into this whole thing in the first place, I'd consider it disrespectful, like wearing jeans to a sermon. Disrespectful to God, disrespectful to the office you hold, and to the congregation. Is he really so desperate to get a swear out that he's going to try to cover it up like that? Now, about what he said regarding Biden.
Number 46 gets up and starts announcing that he won when the numbers at that time didn't reflect it.
Fascinating. I think Trump would disagree with you on that one. Check this out. This is from November 4th, 2020, the night of the election. Trump saw Biden passing him in votes and started freaking out.
We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list. Okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
Voting had stopped by that point, but there were literally millions of ballots. The counting process had begun. Contrary to Trump's delusional belief, he did not win. There were Trump supporters in different cities in the US yelling contradictory things. Trump was ahead at that point in Georgia because they counted the rural areas before counting the cities. So they were yelling stop the count there, and they were in Arizona yelling keep counting because Arizona had counted their mail-in ballots before the in-person ballots. So Biden had an early lead. They can try to gaslight all they want, but I was there. I saw how this played out, and I happen to know that Trump and his extremists have never cared about consistency or logic or rationality. They care about winning at any cost, even if it means cheating. Now, regarding what Kunneman said a minute ago about Biden saying he won the election before the numbers reflected it, I think he got Biden confused with Trump. Biden didn't come out and declare victory until days later. That clip of Trump declaring victory,
we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it.
That's from the night of the election, days before Biden declared victory. It was way too early to tell who had won at that point, and Trump knew it, and Biden knew it too. So here we find ourselves, once again, in a position where this extremist right-wing pastor is trying to convince us that what we know to be fact isn't actually fact at all. We got it confused. The word gaslighting is thrown around a lot and misused constantly, but this is a really good example of actual gaslighting. Let's continue with Kunneman.
And then after he makes that announcement, which was the clarion call, they did it because they got nervous because all of their Dominion machines were messing up, that they stopped the election. Who does that? Okay, get a brain. Do you really think that there's not an agenda?
His audience is absolutely eating this shit up. Of course, what he's saying is completely fabricated and is actually the subject of a $1 billion defamation lawsuit against the lawyers who originally made the claim. It's a lie from beginning to end, but his audience believes it.
Get a brain. Why did they try so many times to impeach this guy? Because the devil doesn't want this man to represent us. And it's obvious by what's happening in Afghanistan. Come on, wake up. And all the other things that are happening in the nation, open borders.
I have to pull each piece apart. I can't let him get away with this stuff. I'm not going to touch the Afghanistan stuff right now, but if you're curious what my views are on that, you can check out my Twitter account or my Fireside Chat channel. As far as the impeachments go, they were justified impeachments. Why is a pastor even talking about this stuff? I used to try not to get involved in politics on my main channel years ago. I should have known better than to think I'd be able to avoid it, especially in this political climate. Religion and politics are inextricably linked to each other in the US, and we have Billy Graham, Jerry Falwell, and others to thank for that. They did their best to tie religion to politics so they could wield some kind of power outside of their churches. We have laws in the US to prevent them from getting so heavily involved in politics. They aren't legally allowed to endorse a political candidate, according to US tax code. But here we are. We have pastors holding campaign events at their church and collecting donations for them at the end, like Jack Hibbs did with California governor candidate Larry Elder. Before we continue, I want to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring, or you can check out my Etsy shop. I sell all kinds of cool stuff on there, including these signs. If you want to keep Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons from knocking on your door, put one of these out front. I sell a bunch of other stuff on there too, including game and controller stands for every system from the original Nintendo to the PlayStation 4, so give it a look. You might find something you like. Anyways, let's keep listening to Kunneman.
So what happens is whether you believe the prophets, don't believe the prophets, could care less, you voted for the other guy or you voted. The bottom line is we need the rightful president in position of power. We need that settled. Here's why we need it settled. If it's not settled, then can you really ever trust in the future? Quit talking 2022, people. Some of you politicians that watch me, quit talking 2022 if you won't fight for 2020.
Quit talking about 2022 if you won't fight for 2020. Basically, if you don't support Donald Trump, then my church won't vote you into office in 2022. How is this not violating the Johnson Amendment in US tax code? I don't get it. People can literally hold campaign events for politicians and nobody does anything about it. This is how a country becomes a Christian nationalist state. This is what happened to Saudi Arabia. This is why some countries in the Middle East are technologically behind other countries. It all started when they banned the printing press for religious reasons. That was the beginning of the end. The church has always held us back, every step of the way. We want to end slavery? We can't, because the church is behind us using Bible verses to justify it. We want to integrate blacks and whites, bring them into the same schools and neighborhoods? We can't, because the church is behind us, telling us it isn't what God wants. Blacks are marked with the curse of Cain. We want protections for women so they can live their own lives, have their own bank accounts, drink and be merry. We can't because the church is behind us, quoting 1 Timothy 2:12. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet. We want equal protections for people in the LGBT community? Can't. The church is screeching the 6 verses in the Bible that ever mention homosexuality. Every time we make progress on anything, the church is there standing in our way and using its power over society as a bludgeon. I'm honestly fucking sick of it. And based on how integrated into politics the church is at this point, I think we can expect more of it in the future. Let's keep listening.
And they want you to ignore the fact that President Trump really did win by a landslide, and it's proven, it's going to continue to be proven. Arizona's coming out with it. It's going to continue to snowball.
No, he didn't. He didn't even win, let alone by a landslide. He failed miserably. He just can't accept defeat, and he's suckered the church into fighting his battles for him.
What next? Shut your churches down? Take your kids out of your home? Your wife? Put you in a concentration camp? Who knows? I know they're gonna really mess with that one. I didn't say that's what they're gonna do. That's why you got to stand up, 81 million of you. Stand up.
Yeah, he's got a point. There are about 81 million evangelicals or Christian extremists in the US, at least. My general rule of thumb is about 15% of any movement is extreme. 81 million, which is roughly about how many white evangelicals there are in the US, is about 23% of the country. That should be concerning. Anyways, he came out with another clip the other day. Kunneman made a very specific prediction that Trump would win the election, and he said God told him that. So if Trump doesn't win, then he's in bad shape. His reputation is on the line. So he's trying to find explanations for why he was wrong this whole time. Check out this next clip. I call it Flop Flip.
But watch, for you have heard the saying, flip, flop. But I speak to you this day, flop, flip. You say, what do you mean? I speak flop, flip, because the agenda of hell and those who have agreed and thought that they could steal this land through your election and steal the future from your children, it shall flop.
Okay, that's a little confusing. So he's saying evil people's plans will flop. Keep in mind he's basically telling his audience that he's writing new verses to the Bible. Kunneman chapter 2 verse 3. God is giving him this information from on high. Apparently God speaks in modern US idioms. Let's continue.
And then, watch what shall arise. Whistleblowers after whistleblowers. They shall not only see that their agenda has flopped, they will begin to flip. And God says there will be a turning of my hand and a turning of their mouths.
A turning of their what? Okay, so I guess the flop part of flop flip means their plans will fail, and the flip part of flop flip means they'll come back to Jesus and side with Trump, supposedly. What's with that big-ass long pause he gave at the end?
Of their mouths. And they will speak loudly, and they will turn on one another, and they will expose one another to save what they would think their own future. Watch for the great flip. And the Lord says, when you see this, it will flip in this nation too.
This is like another end times prediction. These people can't help themselves, can they? They have to come out with new prediction after new prediction, and they inevitably fail. I honestly can't figure out why they keep making new predictions like this. I get it. They want Trump to be president. Desperately. So desperately, they're willing to get violent for it. But making a fool of yourself isn't helping, is it? You guys remember Harold Camping? He was an evangelical radio host. A big deal. And he was so convinced that the rapture was coming on May 21st, 2011, that his company spent over $5 million on 5,000 billboards announcing the date. That's certainty right there. Dude retired a couple months later and eventually formally admitted he was wrong. He died in 2013, and in 2018, Family Radio, the radio show he used to be a part of, stopped airing his old sermons. So now he fades to obscurity, forever a laughingstock. But he can serve as an example of what not to do. Unfortunately, I guess it's been a little too long. People forgot how bad Harold Camping looked through that whole thing. I guess Hank Kunneman wants to relive Harold Camping's glory days. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Thanks for watching, guys.